Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm just wanting to talk to you guys about, well, me, and give you guys a better look at who I am as a person and why I enjoy making videos so much, when and where my love for movies started, and basically just what makes me tick, and why growing my channel is so important to me. Let's get into it. So, why am I on YouTube making these videos? Well, there's the most obvious reason, which is that I have a genuine love and passion for movies. Everyone who knows me in real life, like my family and friends, knows just how passionate I am about films. I've been that way my whole life. When I was a kid, I would go through different phases, as I'm sure is the case for pretty much everybody, but I would always have one movie that was just the movie. Like, that was the only movie I watched for a season in my life. And I would just watch it over and over, quite honestly, to probably an excessive amount, and it drove my family nuts. As a real little kid, and to the best of my knowledge, the first movie I was ever truly hooked on was the 101 Dalmatians animated movie, which was very old even at the time I was a kid. I mean, I'm not that old. That was the early 90s. And so obviously I'm not talking about the live action one, which was also good, but couldn't touch the cartoon. I do remember loving this film as a child, but I was only like 4 or 5, so my memories of it are very blurred. Obviously I've seen the movie plenty as an adult, but I'm just saying my memories of being addicted to this movie are blurred, but I've been told stories about how much I would watch it over and over by all my family. As I got older, my taste in movies shifted, of course, as everyone's does, and I give all the thanks for that to my parents. In terms of how my taste in movies shifted, my love of horror movies, which is my favorite genre overall, came directly from my mom. We learned at a young age that I could pretty much handle horror movies very well. Like, they just did not scare me. I'm not saying I didn't occasionally get goosebumps from watching certain films or scenes. And I mean, yeah, I've had nightmares in my life, but by and large, I could handle just about anything at a pretty young age. So that became me and my mom's thing. We would watch movies like Hellraiser and Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman and Nightmare on Elm Street and Lost Boys. And then not long after all of that, I was introduced to Halloween 1978 through a friend of mine's dad, which became my favorite horror film of all time. But then over time, my love and appreciation for more sophisticated films came from my dad. I started appreciating more performance and character-driven films. I became a fan of movies like A Few Good Men and Legends of the Fall, which I did briefly go over in my top 5 favorite movies of all time video. And in fact, I'll put up a card for that video at the end of this video, so you guys can go check that out as soon as you're done with this one. If you want, of course. But I digress. So at this point in my life, I discovered that movies didn't have to be explosive or action-packed or have shock value like horror films to be great films. And I started taking notice to things like character development and world building and character arcs and coherent scripts as well as good dialogue. And the more familiar I got with these things, the more important they became to me and the more I would look for them every time I'd watch a new film. Of course, there are exceptions. As I always say, I grade a film on what its intentions were and what it was trying to be and how well it accomplished in being what it tried to be. But again, that's a topic that I have a whole other video for. Another shameless plug, but you can also go check that video out when you're done. I do my best to break all this down in that video, so if you're interested, go watch it. But back to what I said about great dialogue, right around that time as well was when I was introduced to Pulp Fiction, which was a new movie back then. And in fact, if we were using dialogue as the measuring stick to determine how great a movie is, by that standard, Pulp Fiction would likely be a real contender for the greatest movie ever made. But I was like 6 when that movie came out, and I just thought that was the coolest movie ever. Definitely not a movie for a 6-year-old. And I don't know how many people will remember this, but in the 90s, R-rated movies and especially horror movies weren't nearly as accessible to children. It wasn't nearly as socially acceptable as it is now, and it was a lot more taboo, I guess you could say. So I felt like I was just the coolest kid ever. Like there was some super prestigious club that only I was a part of, if that makes any sense. Until, of course, Scream came out in '96 and highly commercialized horror and completely changed the landscape of horror. Every kid on the planet wanted to be Ghostface for Halloween, and suddenly being a horror fan was cool. It was no longer edgy, which I admit was a bit disappointing, but I suppose it had to happen eventually. But as I said, by this time, I was already really getting fascinated with almost all aspects of film. I guess a lot of people do to some degree, but I'd say most people are more fascinated with the personal lives and relationships and the drama of actors themselves and just overall the glamour of Hollywood. I never cared about any of that, not one bit. Honestly, I never even had a desire to go out and meet celebrities or get autographs or any of that. By the way, I'm not insulting anybody who does that. I'm not talking down to that or minimizing that in any way. I'm just saying for me personally, it wasn't my thing, but I do think it's awesome if you do that. That was just never my thing. That's the great thing about art. Everyone enjoys it in different ways. As for me, I just developed a genuine love for the art itself. I started focusing on things like cinematography and the different styles of filmmaking, and I became addicted with being able to find all the little details and nuance that each director and actor brought to their films. I wanted to be able to look at a film and be able to make an educated guess on who directed it without even looking at the cover or the credits. Obviously, with some directors, it's easier than others, like Quentin Tarantino, for instance. He has a very blatant signature and style to his movies, with his use of loud colors and style and exaggerated action sequences. You can spot a Tarantino film from a mile away, especially his more dialogue-driven films, because more than anything, Tarantino has a signature style to his dialogue. But not only can you easily spot one of his films because he's perfected his craft and he's so good with it, you can also tell when you're dealing with a copycat, because you can see that on the surface it feels like a Tarantino film, but it just doesn't have the nuance of a Tarantino film. But anyways, that's the kind of things I became obsessed with. I used to feel like a nerd, but honestly not in a cool way. I wanted to be able to express all this and talk about it with people, but I was embarrassed because none of my friends or family really shared my level of interest with that stuff. So I kept my mouth shut so I wouldn't feel like too big of a nerd. And back then it wasn't nearly as cool to be a nerd as it is now, but I really was just a big time movie buff, aka nerd. And honestly, I was a little late to the game with the online film community like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. I used all of them, but not to get connected with other like-minded fans. Not sure what took me so long either, but finally getting plugged into all of it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. I stumbled into it because I was actually going through a really tough time in my life and just needed some escapism, and ultimately found that through YouTube. And in that, I found some YouTubers that I really respected and I felt like I connected with as a movie lover, and I love to watch even to this day. I don't watch many of the big time YouTubers. I always gravitated to the smaller ones because I felt like, to me anyways, they definitely weren't when I was introduced to them. Now, where am I going with all of this? I'm sure you're wondering if there's a point to any of this. And the answer is sort of. Honestly, a lot of this is just me talking to you guys, but it's also me sharing my journey to becoming a content creator and what ultimately inspired me to become a YouTuber in the first place and why I take growing my channel so serious. And to be honest, if you would have asked me even just a year ago, I would have never thought in 100 years I would ever actually start a channel. Not because I didn't want to, because I absolutely did. It was a perfect outlet for discussing my number one passion. I just didn't think I had a good voice for it, but I did have a huge support system in the background really cheering me on and really on my case about finally taking the step to making a channel, because they knew it was a passion of mine. But to be honest, I still don't know if I have a good voice for this. I guess that remains to be seen. I'm still just trying to get my footing on this platform and find my own niche. But I was tired of waiting for the perfect time because I realized that time is never going to come. There's never a perfect time. I ultimately just had to make the decision to dive right in. It's a place where you can discuss the things you love and you're going to attract conversation and even possible friendships from like-minded people. It's therapeutic, and it truly makes you feel like you're a part of something. Sure, you have to encounter the occasional asshole. That's just part of it. But in my experience, and not just as a content creator, but even being on the other side as a fan of other creators, most people are just on here looking for the same things you are, which is escapism and camaraderie and fun discussions. Just like anywhere else, not everybody on here is going to agree. And I wouldn't even want that. Disagreements are part of the experience. Having healthy debates many times can even be eye-opening. You may not change your mind entirely or even at all. In fact, many times you won't, but at the very least, maybe you are able to see a new perspective. But sometimes it does change your mind, and you're fortunate enough to develop a whole new love for something like a movie or a TV show. But anyways, I have YouTubers that I've followed for years, and even though I've never actually met them, they have gotten me through some tough times because of the enjoyment and escapism their content provided. And I'm more thankful for them than they'll ever even possibly know, and I appreciate them. And I'm sure plenty of other people have had that same experience with content creators they watch. It's no secret to anyone who has pursued YouTube that it's hard work. And I think the difficulty of being a YouTuber on a consistent basis is becoming more widely acknowledged, and the craft is becoming more and more respected as years go by, but there are still people who think it's an easy gig, and I'm here to tell you it is not. But hey, if my presence on this platform offers that same enjoyment and escapism to even one single person, then it's worth it in my book. This is an awesome platform with awesome people, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it. I'm new at this, and I still have a lot to learn, but I'm always open to feedback and suggestions, so please don't hesitate to throw any constructive criticism my way, or just things you guys would like to see me do on this channel. I don't have a very big subscriber count, and I don't get a bunch of views yet. But I'm genuinely and sincerely thankful for every single one of you. And right now, my main focus and number one priority is just giving you guys the best content I can possibly provide. But that's it for this video, guys. If you took the time out of your day to listen to this, I truly appreciate you. If you're a new subscriber or finding me for the first time, welcome to the channel. I do movie and series reviews as well as rankings, breakdowns, and discussions. You can look through my playlist and my videos and hopefully you'll find something you like. If you have any suggestions or recommendations, I'd love to hear them. I do upload weekly, so turn your notifications on so you never miss a video. And in the meantime, like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe and I'll catch you guys on the next one.